and all these points. Now, few more options are there in JavaScript we need to learn. So we need to discuss about how do we use the other object-oriented features. Simple example on them. Mr. Mohan, when I share the screen, you will get the screen. So don't put a comment immediately every time, right? When I share the screen, you will get the screen. Very excited immediately within the next second message. Right. So yesterday we discussed about the recursions and all. Then next important so we are going to see other basic terms of object-oriented programming. So that is another option we are going to learn is how to handle the code reusability. Code reusability in JavaScript. So in JavaScript object-oriented programming, code reusability can be handled. So it is the key feature of OOP, and you can handle by using code reusability can be handled by using two concepts we call aggregation and inheritance. Technically, aggregation and inheritance. So aggregation is nothing but aggregation allows to access the code of one class in another by using object to object reference. By using object to object reference. So aggregation allows to access the code of one class in another class by using object to object reference. So we can create an object through the object we can access. That is what actually the concept of aggregation. So technically how the aggregation works. So let's see one point. That means we are creating a class. So class. So this is a super class. And we are creating another class called derived class. And a super class is having a method, so a member. So this is print method. And this is document.write. It is superclass print method. Superclass print method. So I want to access this in the derived class. So in the derived class, we have a print method. This print method is using document.write. This is a derived class print method. So we have a superclass print method and derived class print method. Now I create an object for derived class. Then I can access only derived class members. That means obj.print. It can access only derived class. So I am printing here br line break and here br line break. And it is accessing only derived class print method. So it is accessing and using only the derived class print method. But I want to access the base class print method. Through one object, I want to access both. Then in the derived class print, we can use this superclass print method. How to access that inside this? So you can do that by creating an object. This object will be for superclass. Through that object, we can access the print method. That means this is called aggregation. Aggregation means, so without defining the relation between classes, you can access the members of one class in another. Without defining relationship between the classes, we can access the members of one class in another class. So it is often known as has a relation. That is the technical term used for that. That means we are not maintaining any relationship between the classes. Without maintaining relation between the classes, we can access the members of one class in another class. By using an object of that class, we can access here. That is what actually, so reusability. When I refresh, you can see I'm accessing the superclass and the derived class print methods by using only one object. But this derived class print is accessing base class print inside it. So we can reuse without rewriting by using this technique. This is called as, actually we call this mechanism as inheritance. This is aggregation. This is aggregation. We have inheritance. Inheritance is used technically when we are means inheritance. It is a technique so that allows to configure relationship between classes. So it is referred as is a relation. So the members, so a new class can extend existing class. A new class can extend existing class. So existing class is known as superclass. New class is known as derived class. and the relation is defined by using extends keyword extends keyword. And important, superclass members are accessed by using super keyword super keyword. That means here inheritance is nothing but, so we are not creating an object. If we are not creating an object, then only derived class will come. Now we will create a relationship between the classes. Derived class, so extends superclass. That means the members of superclass are directly accessible in derived class. In derived class print method, I am accessing super. So we have to use the keyword super. Super dot print. Through super keyword, you can access it. You don't need to create an object. That means it will call the superclass print method. Now, when I save this, now you can see it is working fine. This time, we are not creating an object of superclass. We are accessing the members of superclass directly by using the super keyword. This allows this allows extensibility. We can reuse the code without creating any object. We are just maintaining relationship between the classes, and that we can do by using this technique. Super is the keyword which is used to access the members of superclass. So this is actually the concept of inheritance. It is referred as a relation. So inheritance is achieving two things: extending the code and reusing the code reusability and code extensibility. So this is one option. Actually, you have to know that inheritance is supported for technically inheritance is supported for classes in following hierarchies. Inheritance is supported for classes by using following hierarchies. What are the hierarchies supported for classes? So what are the hierarchies supported for the classes? Let's see what are the hierarchies supported for classes. One is it supports single inheritance. It supports multi-level inheritance. It will not support single inheritance, multi-level inheritance. Classes are not supported with multiple inheritance. So multiple inheritance is not supported. What is the reason? We will see why multiple inheritance is not supported. When you are using inheritance, we have certain rules for inheritance. Actually, when you are using the inheritance technique, one basic rule you should know that. So when the inheritance is used, first point is, means you can simply say that the constructor of derived class must have a super call. This is an important term you have to remember. must have a super call. What does that mean? I will show you. Actually, so if constructors are defined in a super and derived class, if constructors are defined in super and derived class, always first super class constructor will have to execute then followed by derived class constructor. First we have to execute the super class constructor, then derived class constructor. So without calling the super class constructor, derived class constructor cannot execute. That is the basic thing. That means I will show you the problem here. Generally, so we are having a class, super class and derived class. In the super class, we have a constructor, and I will give document.write as a super class constructor. Okay, we have a super class constructor. Now in the derived class also we have a constructor, and this is document.write. So this is derived class constructor. Two constructors are there, super class constructor and derived class constructor. Now important is these constructors. So I'm creating an object, let obj is equal to new derived. So then these two constructors should load and run, because derived class is coming from, it is extending super class. I will refresh here. So derived class constructor only came. Super class constructor is not there. And observe here, must call super constructor in derived class before accessing this. You must call super constructor in derived class before accessing the current class constructor. That is mandatory, otherwise error will come. So super class constructor need to be called before the derived class constructor. That is mandatory. Then how do we call the super class constructor inside this derived class constructor? So we use the keyword super. By using the super keyword, we are calling the super class constructor. And here you can see when I refresh now, so it gets both and there is no problem. So in inheritance, the basic rule is super class constructor is called first, then followed by derived class. That is the rule of inheritance. It is mandatory. So if constructors are defined in super and derived class, always first super class constructor have to execute, then followed by derived class. That means you should know that derived class constructor must have a super call. That is the example. This is example, otherwise it will show an error. So that means the derived class constructor must have a super call. Then you have to follow this technique. Right. Now you need to understand about how do we handle this means this is single inheritance currently. So one class is extended by another class. Now, why multiple inheritance is not supported? So that is the question actually. So FAQ, that means why multiple multiple inheritance is not supported. Actually, multiple inheritance is nothing but a class derived, and it extends super super 1 super 2 like this. If it is trying like this is invalid. It is not valid. It is invalid. Now the question is why it is invalid. That means why a class cannot extend two superclasses or three superclasses. This is multiple inheritance. So a derived class cannot extend multiple superclasses. It can extend only one. Why it is not possible? So that is easy to answer if you have understood this concept clearly. If you understood this concept clearly, then you can easily answer that. I will show you the point here. So that means now the concept is, see, so we have two superclasses. We have two superclasses. So this is super 1 and this is super 2. So superclass have a constructor. Super 1 have a constructor. Super 2 also have a constructor. Now derived class is having it is extends super 1 and comma super 2. That means as I told you already, that means a superclass constructor must be called first. Now tell me which superclass constructor should start first. Which superclass constructor will come, super 1 or super 2? There are two superclasses. Then which superclass constructor will start? Yeah. Now see what happens is, the concept is very simple. Is we have the process. Now this is derived class memory. Now two super classes are there, super 1 and super 2. Now both have constructors. So the point is, don't think that this is order. It's not order. That means super 1 is not first, super 2 is not second. Understood? That means that is not order at all. Don't think that first super 1, second super 2. That is not order. All are super classes only. There is no order. Now what happens is, if you mention two super classes, then only one constructor should work. That means only one superclass constructor should execute in the derived class. Both cannot execute. Only one should execute. If one should execute, then super 1 constructor will wait for super 2 constructor to go into process. Super 2 constructor is waiting for super 1 constructor to go into process. Means both are waiting for each other and no one is starting. Understood? Both are waiting for each other and no one is starting. This situation is called deadlock. We call as deadlock. Deadlock is a situation where both are waiting for each other. No one starts. Forever, they will not start. Forever, if they are not starting, that means it is not possible. That means it is not possible that a single derived class can inherit multiple superclasses because there will be a deadlock of constructors. No constructor of superclass will start. That's the reason multiple inheritance cannot work for classes. Because of, what is your answer now? Because of why multiple inheritance is not supported? Because of whose deadlock? Because of whose deadlock? Constructor deadlock. Understood? Because of constructor deadlock. So many people, when we ask this, they say ambiguity issues will come, this, that, right? Ambiguous issues will come when it is supported. Means if multiple inheritance you are doing, then ambiguous issues will come. So that is not the reason for this concept at all. So everywhere, this is the process how it works. That is the reason it is not supported. What is MRO concept, Mr. Kishan Kumar? Oh, you invented a shortcut for that. What is method resolution order? Can you tell me? Are you sure? You ever tried that? You tried for constructor? Huh? You tried for constructor? Then you should not talk if you don't know about that, right? We are talking about constructors, right? We are not talking about methods to call. We are talking about constructors. Anywhere in any programming, in object-oriented programming, any technology in the world, multiple inheritance for classes not supported because of constructor deadlocks. Multiple inheritance is supported for interfaces. We don't have interfaces in JavaScript, but it is supported for interfaces. Do you know why it is supported for interfaces? Interfaces. Because we don't have interface here. Multiple inheritance is supported for interfaces, but JavaScript is not having interfaces. It will not support interfaces. Because interfaces will not have constructor. Am I right? Am I right? Interfaces don't have constructor. That means this problem is not related to methods or something else. This problem is related to constructor. So interface don't have constructors. In that case, they don't have this issue. They don't have this issue. That's the reason they support. But we don't have any interfaces here in JavaScript. So we need to just restrict up to this point. So technically, why multiple inheritance is not supported? Due to constructor deadlock. That is the key thing. Because first, you have to call the superclass constructor. If there are multiple superclasses, there is no priority and order for superclass. All are superclasses only. In that case, it cannot handle this. That is the key point. So that is due to constructor deadlock mechanism. It is supported for interfaces because interfaces will have constructors, will not have constructors. Right. The next important point you need to know is multi-level inheritance. Multi-level inheritance means in this approach, a derived class can be extended. A derived class can be extended. We can extend a derived class. So base class, a derived class can be extended. In this approach, a derived class can be extended. So that is multi-level hierarchy. That means, for example, in a multi-level hierarchy, suppose we are creating class. So multiple version here. To understand why interface will not have a constructor, first you should know what is interface. Tell me what is interface, Anushri. What is interface? And what is the purpose of interface? If you know that, that means you know minimum basics of object-oriented programming. We should not talk about interface in JavaScript because JavaScript don't have interface. But if you know any object-oriented programming, what is purpose of interface? That means you don't know properly about interface. Interface is not for implementation. Then what is abstract class? If interface is for implementation, what is abstract class? So properly you don't know interface actually. Interface is used for designing contracts. Interface is used for designing contracts. Contracts means rules. Interface contains contract. Interface is a contract. Contract means interface contains only rules. And the rules cannot contain a functionality. Rules can contain only declaration. Rules cannot contain functionality. You know this, huh? Anushri? Right? And a constructor is having some functionality now. And interface cannot have functionality. It can have only declaration. Even you write methods or properties in interface, they cannot have implementation, right? They are just rules. They cannot defined with functionality. In that case, there cannot be a constructor because constructor requires implementation of some functionality, right? Right. That's the reason interface will not have a constructor. For that, first you should know properly what is interface. Right? Then you can understand. So here I'm using class. Class is some ES5. That is the class. In ES5 class, we have so REST parameters. REST parameters. Then I defined option as new REST parameters. New REST parameters. So that is first one. Okay. So the new REST parameters. So that is the property, the new REST parameters, or just I will keep a method better. Okay, here I am defining a method that REST. So here I say document.write. So new REST parameters introduce. So in ES5. So this is ES5. ES5, the new REST parameters introduced. Okay. Then I'm defining here next another class. Another class, ES6. ES6 is having some other options, right? So in ES6, we are defining some map right here, document.write. So ES6 map and sets introduced like this. Okay. Now this is the extension of ES5. That means here I defined extends. It extends ES5. That means now along with REST, you have this map and sets also into ES6. That means it is continuing to the previous. It is extending and it is accessing. And here I can access that REST method here. That means here I can use super.rest method here. That means along with that, this facility is also available. Okay. Then I am creating another class, that is JavaScript, and extends ES. So ES6. That means this derived class is again extended by another derived class. And this is having a print method, which is calling the superclass map method. Now I am creating an object, let.js is equal to new JavaScript. Through JS, I am calling the print method. That means it should be able to print. It should able to print all the details here. It should able to print all the details. I will just keep here. So line breaks BR and here BR, and it should able to access all of them. This is multi-level hierarchy. This is a multi-level hierarchy. That means a super class is extended by a derived class. This derived class is extended by another derived class. Here you can have some functionalities like, so document.write. So JavaScript features. We are configuring this. And you can see it is handling all of them. That means a multi-level hierarchy. Now, what is the specialty of this? Is when user requests, what is the specialty of this is when user requests, like I want what are ES5 features, then you can individually access it. And user requests, I want what are ES6 and ES5 features, both. Then you can create object for this. I want all features, means this JavaScript can have other features also, and you can create this. That means individually they are accessible and collectively all together accessible with the reference of one object, with the reference of one object. A derived class is extended by another derived class. This is exhibiting a multi-level hierarchy, exhibiting a multi-level hierarchy. So that means a derived class can extend another derived class. But a derived class cannot extend multiple superclasses. That is multiple inheritance. That is the problem. We cannot do that. So this is the general approach about inheritance. But here JavaScript is not a OOP language. Some features of OOPs are supported. That's the reason a lot of things are pending here. We cannot have access modifiers like public, private, protected. You cannot have interfaces, contracts, abstracts. So that is not recommended here. So that's the reason only up to certain limits it can use the object-oriented approach. That's the reason we say that JavaScript supports OOP, but not a complete OOP language. So for code reusability and extensibility, we can use this. We can use this. So aggregation and inheritance. Now, another object-oriented support here we have is polymorphism. Polymorphism. Actually, technically, polymorphism is nothing but means what is actual polymorphism and how it works. Several things internally happens through this polymorphism only. So generally, what is polymorphism and how it works technically? Let's see the point here. To understand this polymorphism, so we need to know some important points like generally, suppose I will give you one example. Earlier, we have devices like pager. We have a pager device. We have a digital data bank. Actually, we call as digital organizers actually. Okay. Organizer. And we have a camera. We have a phone like this. Camera and phone. That means I think many of you have you seen pagers? Pager, you know pager? Have you seen pagers? Do you know pager? Before the mobiles came, actually first pagers came. Pager is a messaging device. Actually, it is used for messaging. So sending SMS, some limited characters of SMS you can send. So that is actually pagers. So pager looks like this. This is pager. These are pagers. So these are meant for only sending messages, right? Only sending messages. So to any remote, another pager people, we can send a message. This is only for messaging earlier. Now we have another digital organizer, data bank. Digital organizer like this. After this, digital organizers became very popular. People call them as digital diaries. You can store your notes, addresses, phone numbers, and everything, contact details, appointments in this digital organizer, including a calculator, everything present inside this digital organizers. Then we have phone and we have camera, you know that individually. Now what happened is we got a device called mobile. Now this mobile, after this mobile came, it has the behavior of pager, sending message. It can store your addresses and contacts. It can take photos and videos. It can make calls. That means one device is having all the facilities. That's the reason pagers gone, data banks gone, using of individual cameras are reduced a little bit, right? So obviously landlines and all the phones are gone, majority. You can see mobiles. Now the point is, one device is having all the types of functionalities. Am I right? Now here the key point is, that means the mobile is exhibiting polymorphism. Poly means many. So morphos means forms. But remember, one specialty here is, suppose there is no SIM card in my mobile. Can I use the mobile? If there is no SIM card in my mobile, can I use the mobile? Can I use the mobile? Yes, we can use the mobile. If there is no SIM card, camera will not work. Camera will work. I can take photos. My phone book will work. Right? That means the point is very simple. That means, remember, polymorphism means at different stages, different situations, it should work in a different way. Right? Only the point is you can't send message and you can't call. Am I right? Then that means if one device is having different behaviors, then we call this as polymorphism. Polymorphism. So that means one component have several behaviors. Now the question is how this is possible? How we can create one component? Now let's go technical. How we can create one component with several behaviors? That means, suppose how this is possible actually. So see here. So now what happens? We designed one object. For this object is coming from one class. And the memory is allocated for that. That means in that memory, it can have one functionality. So, but if you can allocate different memories for the same object, if you can allocate different memories for same object, in every memory, it can handle different functionality. That means object is one. Earlier, only one type of memory is allocated. Now we have class 1 memory, class 2 memory, class 3 memory. 3 different classes memory is used by one object. If one object can use the memory of 3 different classes, that means it can handle 3 different functionalities in 3 different situations. That means how you can achieve polymorphism in object-oriented programming. how you can achieve polymorphism in object-oriented programming. So by creating an object which can use the memory of several classes. How an object can use memory of several classes, that is the key thing you need to understand. If an object can use memory of several classes, every class have different features. That means one object can use different features. In different situations, different features. That is the speciality of that object. That means at different instances, it can work in a different way. Different instances, it can work in a different way. So that is what actually polymorphism, how that is possible actually. Suppose here we are configuring. So like this, suppose here I am configuring like this. Suppose here, see, I am defining a